Sometimes it seems like why won't go away. It's like that word just stays with us the whole time, and we're trying to figure out life, and why keeps driving every thought we have in our brain. Before I dig in, I want to do something I haven't had a chance to do yet. Do you know that there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes here at Park Avenue before you get here during the week? There are people working hard to prepare for what you experience and enjoy so much on Sunday mornings. One of those persons I spent some time with this past week. Debbie and I did, and I'm just going to embarrass her and recognize her, and that's Victoria Mooneyham. She's in the back here. She is an amazing person. I discovered that this week. I already knew it, but I discovered it even more this week as we shared a condo with her and Brooks and Jamie and Debbie and 3 dogs. And here's what she would do at night late while we were recovering from the whole day of learning. She had been taking care of Paxton and the dogs and all that, but she'd been working at the same time. So when I'd come in late at night, we were just sitting there. She's working. She's on her computer working. She's developing a new app for us here at the church. She is always putting together things for us in communication. So I just want to thank you and lift you up and say, hey, help her. Let's give her a round of applause for all she does for us. Thank you, Vic. It's amazing. We have an incredible staff, and I'm so honored to be a part of this staff. We're talking about why. I told you last week something that I hope you took in, and that's this. Fill in your first blanks, I think it is. Jesus is more interested in your why than your what. I mean, I could preach on that for months, I think. I just love that whole concept. Jesus is more interested in who you are, why you do what you do, than he is in what you do, what you do. And so now that we kind of understand that concept, we're going to look this week at a little different piece of the why. And it really is tied together with this idea of urgency. So I want to spend some time talking to you about, are you living with a sense of urgency? I mean, the title I think we said was, Why Not Now? Let me tell you about a sense of urgency. We were, we were in Macon at the time. I was still practicing law. Jim was 10 years old, starting the 5th grade, I think is where we said he was. And he is at a neighbor's house, and he's playing with some kids in the neighborhood. And we get a phone call. Moms and dads, you ever get this phone call? Hey, I think you guys need to come over here and get Jim. I think he broke his wrist. Have you ever had one of those kind of calls? And we're like, of course, we're like, he's our only child, and we're like crazy panicking. Oh my gosh, he broke his wrist. What are you talking about? And so we get in the car, we rush over there, and sure enough, we get there. His wrist is like, he's like, it's definitely broken. It's not working. And so we're like, oh my gosh, we got to take him to the doctor. He's holding up pretty good. He's been crying, we could tell, but he's holding up pretty good. So let's go to the hospital. And so Debbie and I put him in the car, and we're driving towards the hospital. Now, here's the dilemma, because I kind of know things, a lawyer a little bit know things that are happening in the town, and so I know which one is the better hospital, and so I'm like, let's go downtown to the hospital downtown. And Debbie's like, no, let's go to the one that's closest to us, because we can get in quicker. I was like, yeah, but we're going to get better service if we go downtown. So we were having one of those discussions. Have you ever had one of those? We're discussing this concept of which hospital to go to, and I'm like, no, we've got to go to the one downtown. I'm telling you, we're going to get better service there. And David's like, no, he's hurting. We got to go right now. So Jim in the back seat speaks up and says, would y'all quit arguing and just get to a hospital? He had a sense of urgency about him, and so did we. But listen, as a Christ follower, here's my hope for me, and maybe it's the hope for you too, that you might buy into, is that we need to live with a sense of urgency. So that's what we're going to dig in today. It's because we are given so much. The issue is, what are we going to do with it? That's why it's important, as I taught you last week, to discover or rediscover your why. One of the speakers at the conference that we were attending this week was Simon Sinek, the guy that I told you helped me develop the series. He wrote a book called Start With Why. And as part of his teaching, he didn't do it this week, but I'd read it from his books. What he says is, your why rises up in who you are, usually by age 13. So most people in here have already felt what their why would be. But here's what happens. Sometimes it gets covered up with life, and so we need to discover it or rediscover it. You might think, well, I do remember something that burned in my heart a while back, and I had this passion, but my time is gone. My chance is past. I can't go back to that and live out that passion anymore. That ship has sailed. Well, no, it hadn't. And so we're going to talk about, not being stuck where we are, but living with the sense of urgency. So let me ask you this. Why not now? Are you living with a sense of urgency? When I was serving in Metter, I talked about Metter last week, there was a phone call that I got one afternoon, and it was from one of my church members, and she said, I need you to go to the hospital right now, to the emergency room. And I'm like, okay, tell me what's happening. She says, my dad's there, and he's about to die, and he's not saved. You got to go save him. That's what she told me. She said, you got to go down to the hospital and save him. And I'm like, okay. I was like, all right, tell me a little bit more. She said, yeah, he's in bad shape. I mean, they're saying he's not going to make it. Get down there right now. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. So here's what I did. I was a young minister. I didn't really know a whole lot about, how to handle all these kind of things. So I had a guy in my church who had just had an incredible awakening experience with God. He's a lawyer. He was riding down watch out, lawyers. He was riding down the road one day on his bicycle, and he was talking about getting a new bicycle because he was going to get in shape and do things. He said he literally heard God say to him, you need to stop thinking about what you want and think about what I want. And he said, it awakened my spirit. He said, Jimmy, it was like God himself spoke to me. And so Judd, my friend who's on the bicycle, he said, it's like for the first time I understood Amazing Grace. I sang that song most of my life, but I didn't understand it. But now I do, Jimmy. And so I called Judd that day when I got the phone call to go to the emergency room. I said, Judd, go with me to the emergency room. Let's go see Mr. James. You know Mr. James. He said, okay, I'll go. So we go to the emergency room, and here's what happens. We walk in, and Mr. James is in the back there, and they've got him, on the stretcher, got all these things hooked up to him. They're running all these tests, and so Judd and I prayed before we went in, and we went in to see him, and I said, Judd, you take the lead, because you can talk to him about what just happened with you. And so Judd said, Mr. James said, we wanted to come see you because I want you to know that I just had this amazing experience with God where I believe for the first time I really committed my life to him, and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And so, Mr. James, we want to make sure that you are there, that you've done that. And Mr. James didn't want to hear it. I mean, he how you deflect something? He deflected immediately. He was like, well, Judd, I remember that time when you came over and we were fixing those fences, and you parked your truck right next to the fence, and we had to get you to move your truck. And they were talking about this conversation. I was like, what in the world? And so the nurse comes in, and she's like, guys, you're going to have to leave because I got to do some more tests. So step out for me. You can come back in a few minutes. And we're like, okay. So Judd and I walk out, and we're standing. I can tell you where we were standing in the hospital in Metter, and we're leaning up against the wall, and I'm like, Judd, this isn't going so well. I mean, he's not receptive to what we're talking about. And Judd said, I don't know what we're going to do. He said, we'll just keep praying. And so we said another prayer there in the hallway. We walked back in his room, and the nurse said we could go in. And we walk up to him. I'm on one side, Judd's on the other side. We're fixing to lay it on him. Mr. James looks up, and you know what he said? He said, Jimmy, you know what? I hadn't always lived my life the way I should have. In fact, I made a lot of mistakes in my life. It's been bad at times. And I said, Mr. James, let me tell you, all of us have. I don't know anybody who couldn't say exactly what you just said. I mean, I can say it, Judd can say it, but here's the beauty of it. That doesn't disqualify us from God's love. And God still loves us. And so all we have to do is acknowledge his love for us and give our life to him, and he forgives us of all of that. And so we just want to make sure that you're at peace with God. You could see that settling in on him. And I believe that it did. And he died a few days later, and I'm confident that he's in heaven now. But there was a sense of urgency that you've got to do this now. You need to go save this father of mine, my church member said to me. And so, everybody, I say, needs to know Jesus Christ. In fact, we're singing a song at the end of the 9 o'clock service in the morning. Everybody ought to know who Jesus is. Old song, it's a great song. Paul, the Apostle Paul, understood this sense of urgency. And so he wrote in one of his letters to the Corinthians, an early church that he had helped start, he wrote to them some incredible words about urgency and about using what God has given to us. Let's read it. It's in 2 Corinthians in 6, 1 and 2. It'll be up on the screen and in your sermon notes. Listen to this. He's writing. He says, as God's partners, you could just pause right there for just a minute. Did you realize that you are a partner with God? If you are in faith, if you have committed your life to Christ, you and God are partners. So as God's partners, we beg you not to accept this marvelous gift of God's kindness and then ignore it. Wouldn't that be a shame? That God sent his son here to earth to die for us, and it's a gift that we have received, and we never opened it. We never looked in at the box to see what was there. He says, It would be a shame for you to do that. Don't do that. Then he says, for God says at just the right time, here comes the urgency, just in the nick of time, I heard you. On the day of salvation, I helped you. Indeed, the right time is now. Today is the day of salvation. I mean, I just love the fact that Paul feels that everything that he does in life is urgent. I don't know that he had that urgency before he had his conversion. Maybe he did because he was out to get those early Christians. But we know for a fact that after he had his conversion, every single day, every waking hour, every morning when he woke up, his why was, I've got to get this message out. People need to know this truth and be freed from the chains that are holding them back. And so you and I have received the greatest gift anybody could ever receive. If you're in Christ, you've already received it. The question is, what are we going to do with it? We've experienced his love. He's been giving it to us all of the days of our life. We didn't even recognize it until maybe we gave our life to him. But even before that, he was pouring out this gift on us. And so Paul says, don't waste it. What are you going to do with it? Here's what Billy Graham said. Billy Graham, you know who he is. He said, time moves so quickly. And no matter who we are or what we have done, the time will come when our lives will be over. As Jesus said, as long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. I mean, Billy Graham understood that urgency. I mean, that's what he spent his life doing. And so we should be living with a sense of urgency. And so here's what it means. For me personally, it means I want to know this Jesus Christ. I want to know what he can do for me in my life, and I want to live that out. But more than that, it's urgent that my family know. I mean, I think of so many families where moms and dads just didn't take the mantle upon them to teach their kids the reality of who Jesus is and what he can do for them. But then there's more than that. I need to know that others outside of my family, outside of my own personal relationships, I need to know that they know and do these things that God has asked us to do. So I got 3 thoughts today I want to talk to you about when it comes to urgency. And now is the time. So here's the first one. Follow along with it. The first one is this. It's very simple. What we do now determines what happens next. Isn't that brilliant? Would you say that's just so brilliant, Jimmy? Way to go. I mean, what we do now determines what happens next. It's like what we do today sets the course for tomorrow. I was talking to somebody earlier about that. I said, I don't know if you're those kind of the kind of person who sets out your clothes on the night before work or the night before school or the night before church. I mean, Debbie does. She puts out her clothes like she hangs them up and she's ready. And of course, I'm the guy that the last minute I'm just grabbing stuff and throwing them together. I mean, if we go on a trip, she's the one who packs way early. I wait till we're getting ready to jump in the car and I throw some stuff in the bag. But here's the thing. What you do now determines what will happen tomorrow. Isn't that simple? And so it's important that we don't waste our time. We set the course today for it. Paul uses a metaphor when in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. He talks about running a race and fighting like a boxer. And here's what he says. He says, therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. He says, I run with purpose in every step. I mean, that's how serious he was about this urgency. And so that's the way we want to run too. One of the speakers that we heard this week was called the Global Leadership Summit. And we heard Simon Sinek was one of our speakers. We heard a lot of speakers. One of them was Craig Groeschel. He is the pastor of Life Church. They're the ones who gave us the app, YouVersion Bible, if you have that. Here's what Craig Groeschel said. He said, the decisions you make today determine the stories you tell tomorrow. I love that. The idea that we're going to be able to tell stories of what God is doing in our lives because of the decisions we're making today. Listen, you get to write the next great chapter of the story of your life. And so you want to do it with purpose. You want to do it with urgency. That's what Paul is saying to us. And if there's ever been a time when we needed to be urgent, I think it's now. Look around the world. Just watch the news. See what's happening. There's a time for us as Christ followers to step up. And today is the day. John Wesley said this. He said, you want to do that together. He said, famous quote from him, he said, give me 100 preachers who fear nothing but sin and desiring nothing but God, and I care not a straw whether they be clergy or lay, such alone will shake the gates of hell and set up the kingdom of heaven on earth. I mean, what a great concept that if we all together live with this kind of sense of urgency about our why and what we're about, listen, it will reshape our community. It'll reshape the world. That's what John Wesley believed. That's what I believe. But it seems like there's something that holds us back because I've been there. Spent a lot of my time holding back. And that's the next thought I have. Number two is this. What is it that holds us back? I mean, why? I understand the concept of the urgency. I understand what we've been given. I understand that other people need it. But why do we hold back? Well, here's what I think. I think the first thing that causes me to hold back, and it did for a long time, is just fear. I'm just afraid. What are people going to think? What are people going to say? I mean, what if I try some of these things and I fall flat on my face? I become just a big failure and I'm rejected. Well, we heard a lot in the last couple of days from these amazing speakers from all around the world, some of them from Africa, some of them from Sweden and other places. And these folks were talking about the fact that anybody who's trying to do something worthwhile is going to fail. But your mistakes don't stop you from doing it. In fact, one of the quotes we heard was, fear has no place in your success equation. Being afraid of failure has no place in your success equation. Another one taught us that the road to success is paved with failures well handled. The question isn't, are you going to fail? Yeah, you're going to fail. But the question is, how do you handle it once we do? There are other things that hold us back. One of them is this. I was guilty of this for a long time. That's just indifference. It's just apathy. It's like I understand, I see that, but listen, I've got my head buried in my own little world right now. If you came and hung out with me for a few days, you would understand why. And so I become indifferent. It's like, I'm just not going to get in the game at all. Maybe somewhere down the road I will. And I've been there, folks. And you know what my prayer would be for me and for you? If that's where you are, I would say with all of my might, I would pray this prayer: God, deliver me from that. Deliver me from being indifferent, because you've given me this incredible gift. Now help me to be urgent about sharing it with others. So the psalmist wrote this, David wrote in Psalm 49, he says, I told the good news of your righteousness in the great assembly. I didn't hold anything back, as you well know, Lord. Now that teaches me this thing. Here's what it teaches me. You mean the Lord knows that I'm holding back? Yeah, he does. I mean, the Lord knows if I'm not doing what I need to be doing, he sure knows that. Now, here's the thing. He doesn't ride our back the whole time. It's not like he's trying to, whip us into shape. He doesn't do that. He loves us gently, pushing us, encouraging us to live out this why. I mean, that's what he does. That's one of the things I love about this Father that we have in heaven. So he knows. But the psalmist said, I didn't hold anything back. There's a great quote by Theodore Roosevelt, 1910. I heard it from Brene Brown. If any of you have ever watched any of her TED Talks, an amazing, amazing speaker. Here's the quote. It's in your notes, and I've given you a little bit of the longer piece. Here's what it says. It's not the critic who counts, the ones who complain that we didn't do it right. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man or the woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. I mean, it's a beautiful quote. It's the man, the woman in the arena that matters. We're going to get knocked down, but we're going to get up, and we're going to keep going. Why? Because there's this urgency that God has placed within all of us, that others might know the love of God through Jesus Christ. Are we going to fail? Yes, but at least we're in the arena. So here's the question. Are you in the arena? Have you been in the arena? And then here's the last thought I got for you. Here it is. Well, what are you waiting for? What is it that we're waiting for? For a long time in my life, I was waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for. You know, sometimes you're just waiting, you're just standing there, and somebody walks up to you, what are you waiting for? I was like, I don't know, just sitting here, I'm just standing here. I don't know, maybe a bus is going to come along. I don't know. I mean, you know, we're just waiting. And so John Maxwell said, we were talking about the fact that you're waiting for the right conditions. You're waiting for things to slow down. Yeah, I remember saying that. Well, you know, when I get a little bit more time and things just slow down, listen to what he says. John Maxwell said this, it ain't going to get slower. The pace of life, have you noticed? I mean, some of us who've got a little bit of gray in our hair or have no hair, we know this, that, you know, life is moving a whole lot faster than it used to move. And listen, it's not going to slow down. I don't think that we're all of a sudden going to say one day, you know what, this technology is too fancy, let's put a hold on it. No, here's what's going to happen. It's going to move faster and faster and faster. If you think your life right now is fast, John Maxwell says it's going to get faster. So you can't wait for that. But then here's the other thing. How much time do we really have? How much time do we have left? The psalmist taught us in Psalm 90, it's an old famous passage, 70 years are given to some. Some even live to 80, but even the best years are filled with pain and trouble. We know that. Life is hard. Soon they disappear and we fly away. I think maybe that's where that song, I'll Fly Away, comes from. But here's the thing. How much time do you have? I saw an illustration a while back. And I thought it was pretty cool, so I wanted to share it with you. 2 jars here. Marbles in these jars. I want you to know that Debbie, my sweetheart, she went out to Hobby Lobby yesterday to get us some more marbles because somewhere in the mood of Valdosta we lost our marbles. And so here's what the marbles represent. Let's say all of us have, these marbles represent our lives, year of our life. Every marble represents a year of our life. And so some of us have in one jar, you guys can't see where they're there, but some of us have in one jar maybe a whole lot of marbles left because we are young and everyone's a year, and so we still got a lot of those 80 or even now these days 100 years or more. And so for some of us, though, we've spent some of those years already. And I'm not going to tell you whose years these represent, but, you know, there's another year goes by, and a marble from over here and the ones we have left moves over here. And here's the thing. Listen, if you have any maturity about you, you know this already. These things move a whole lot faster than they used to move. And so before you know it, 5 have moved over here, or 10 sometimes, and they're going by so fast. And here's the thing, we're not guaranteed another year at all, not another day, not another minute. If you've lost somebody in your family because of some tragedy that was unexpected, listen, you understand that. Nobody's guaranteed anything. So here's the question, here's the urgency that I live with and love the fact that it's a part of my life is this. How much time is going to pass by? I mean, how many more of these are going to move to this other jar until we live out this life that God wanted us to live? Which means, I mean, how many more of these are going to move over here before I forgive the person I really need to forgive? Or you know, I'm going to get serious about my faith. I'm going to share my faith with, I mean, how many are going to, how many does it take? And they just keep going. You're like, well, I'll get to it. I'm going to. And before we know it, you know, what's left? Just a few. And here's the reality. One day, it's going to be empty. Now, I don't tell you that to make you feel morbid. You're like, oh, boy, I feel really excited now. I left church today. I tell you that to illustrate the gift that God has given to us. It's the gift of his love, but listen to me also. It's the gift of life. It's the gift of the opportunity for you and me to make a difference in the lives of others, not because we're something great, but because God is doing something great through us. And so I want to encourage you to not wait another day. If you need to forgive. If you need to take a step in the right direction, take it now. If you need to discover your why or rediscover your why, don't wait another year. Do it now. And if you want help doing that, Jamie would love, our staff would love to sit down with you and say, let me just chat with you and help draw out that why. Let me help you guys that are fathers, help bring your children into this understanding of who God is. Let me give you a plan. Let me work with you. Let me do all I can, because the time is now. It's urgent. It's now. One of the speakers was a guy named Danny Meyer. We really love this guy. We were in crazy love with this guy. He's a famous restaurateur in New York. And he's got these amazing restaurants everybody wants to go to. And this guy was super sharp. And he was talking about the fact that when he was younger, he went through college. He studied political science. And most of us who did that understand what the natural route is for somebody who studies political science. You can be a teacher or you can be a lawyer. And so back in my day, that's what you did. And so he said, I finished political science in the college, and it was time for me to take the LSAT. You know what that is? That's the test you take so you can get into law school. And so he says it was the night before the test, and I was like not feeling good about it. I didn't want to do it. And he said, we were out to dinner with my aunt and uncle. And my uncle said, what's wrong with you? And he said, well, I got to take the LSAT tomorrow. And he said, well, aren't you excited about that? He said, no. He said, why not? He said, because I don't want to be a lawyer. He says, well, then, why are you doing it? He said, well, because that's the natural route. That's what you do. And he said, wait a minute. He said, here's what he said. I wrote it down. He said, the uncle said, you're crazy. Here's the quote. He said, do you know how long you're going to be dead? Longer than you're alive. Isn't that a beautiful statement? Do you know? Share that with your family. Somebody tweet that today, would you? He said to his nephew, Danny, he said, all you've ever talked about is food. Why don't you just open a restaurant? And Danny said that observation from somebody else changed his life, changed his trajectory, changed the course of where he was going. And now he's standing on a stage this week talking to hundreds of thousands of people around the world about what it means to fail and get up again and keep going. I mean, Romans 13 tells us this, and this is our understanding, and do this, understanding the present time. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. You know, every day we're getting closer to when Christ is coming back. It's nearer than when we first believed. The night is nearly over. The day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. So here's the thing. Your why now matters. It matters. It matters to your family. It matters to this church. It matters to this community. It matters to others who are outside of it. God designed you for this. It's time to do it. It's time to do it. You still have time. You and God get to write the next great chapter of your life. Erwin McManus, amazing speaker, who found out about a year or so ago he had cancer. I mean, bad cancer. He had to do this long surgery. This guy's amazing. We heard him speak to us. Here's what he said, not about himself. He said about his dad. He said, let me tell you about my dad. He said, my dad is 96 years old. I had a conversation with him the other day. You know what my dad said? He told him, he says, I believe that my best years are ahead of me now. 96 years old. Do you know what Erwin said? He said, I wrote it down, he said, my dad is going to live until he dies and not get the two confused. Isn't that good? Isn't that what you want to do? You know, here's the thing. We don't get this day back. You're not going to get tomorrow back. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. And so we need to treat every single day as sacred. We need to treat every single day as essential to what God would have us to do. We should live every day like it's our last. I mean, that's it. So when Debbie and I entered the ministry, we did so with a sense of urgency. I mean, this is me, and I think it's certainly Debbie's core too. I want to leave it all on the field. When I'm gone here, I want to leave with an empty tank. I want to be like Paul says, I want to be that drink offering that's been poured out, so that when you shake my cup, my glass, my jar, there's nothing left. Nothing. It's all gone, because I spent it living out a life of urgency so that others might come to know Jesus Christ. And so here it is. I want to worship with people like that. I want to follow people like that. If God should allow me, I would be honored deeply to lead people like that. I want to serve with people like that. I want to do life with people like that. I believe that's you. I believe you want it too. I believe that's why God has drawn you here. And he's stirring something inside of you. He's stirring something inside of me that is so much bigger than us. And it's going to be beautiful and incredible. It's that marvelous gift that he's given to all of us. So here's the question. Why not now? What are you waiting for? Don't waste what you've been giving. Today's the day. That's what I believe. I pray that you'll believe it too. Here's some next steps for you this week. I will discover or rediscover my why. Listen, I'd love to have you do that. I will act now to live it out. It's time that I become that person that God meant me to be. I will no longer hold back, and I will invite somebody to come and experience what God is doing here. The time is now. Today's the day. I'm grateful for you. Let's pray. Father, you have been good to us. You have poured into each one of us more than we ever deserved. You've taught us. You have loved us. You have forgiven us. But you've also called us to share what you have given to us with others. And maybe we need to receive that first. Maybe we're sitting here today and we're just not so sure about all of this, but we know there's something inside of us that's stirring. We know there's a why in there somewhere, and you put it in us. And so if that's one of us today, maybe our prayer today is, God, just help me. You know, I hadn't always done things right, but I want to. And so would you help me? If I were to give my life to you today, God, would you take it and show me what I'm to do? That's who I want to be. We want to pour it all out. We want to leave it all on the field for you, God. And so help us to do that every single precious day that you have given us. That's our prayer. It's our desire. In Jesus' name, amen.